Thanks so much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Ethiopia's Prime Minister calls on more people to urgently join the army as he orders federal troops to engage with Tigrayan rebels who continue to advance through regions in the north. It's a worrying escalation in a 9-month conflict. Also, the economy is the central topic as Zambians gear up for Thursday's general election. They'll be choosing between President Edgar Lungu, whose main rival accuses him of having unsustainably bloated the country's tab. The national debt sits at $13 billion. And establishing ownership of land in Cameroon, even after families have lived there for generations, can be difficult. 80% of court cases in the country are about land disputes. We take a closer look. But first, Ethiopia's Prime Minister has made a bid to expand the army by calling for all citizens of age to join up. The statement from Abiy Ahmed's office comes less than 2 months after he declared a unilateral ceasefire in the war against Tigrayan TPLF rebels in the north. They retook most of Tigray in June and have since pushed on into adjoining regions of Afar and Amhara. Abiy's ordered security forces to face off against the TPLF once more. Now, the conflict first began last November when Abiy sent troops into Tigray, and the death toll is already in the thousands. Both sides have been accused of atrocities, and as the fighting drags on, the humanitarian cost mounts, including a risk of famine and growing numbers of displaced Tigrayans and Eritrean refugees. Earlier, I spoke to Professor Johannes Waldemariam and asked him what drove Abiy to ask for more people to join the army against one rebel region.
It's kind of ironic because, he was declaring complete victory not too long ago, and that he has liquidated and also, that he was hunting for certain individuals. And now he's talking about a full-scale war. And that's really very ironic because it shows that, the information coming from Addis Ababa cannot be relied on.
So, in your opinion, is this an escalation of the conflict?
It definitely is, but, it also looks very desperate on Abiy's part because, he's not really being honest with the Ethiopian people. And if he is trying to recruit people, look, for example, in Waldia, people are saying, why isn't the Ethiopian National Defense Forces coming to help them? And he's saying, he wants to recruit people. What is it? Is his ENDF decimated? And so he's looking for, civilians to protect him? Or is it, it's very confusing kind of a situation, whereas the message we hear from Dr. Debretsion Gebremichael of the TPLF, or the Tigrayan Defense Forces, however you want to call it, is very upbeat and very confident about, the prospects ahead, and looking like...
On that front, we are seeing the Tigrayans pushing on, despite having achieved their original goal of taking back Tigray. Why didn't they stop when they retook their home region? Or is there still fighting to be done in Tigray?
Well, remember, Tigray is landlocked without Walkite and has no international borders. And there is a humanitarian crisis that everybody is talking about, including the United Nations. And so they want to open corridors, they say. But I'm not, saying that the Tigrayans are angels or saints, in terms of the TPLF. No, far from it. But, they are looking for corridors. They're looking for an opening, and they see, that Abiy may be politically and militarily demoralized, and they are trying to take the opportunity to try to capitalize on that.
If the Tigrayans have retaken their home region back, why is it still so hard to at least get help to the Eritrean refugees there or any of the communities that are in the midst of a deepening humanitarian crisis?
The Eritreans are in a particularly dire situation because they are targeted by Tigrayan militia, the TPLF, the Eritrean government, and Abiy Ahmed. They're being scapegoated for all kinds of political purposes and political goals, and they are the most vulnerable and the least publicized. That's what's going on with the Eritreans.
Well, Zambian President Edgar Lungu faces off against his main rival, Hakainde Hichilema, on Thursday. The election comes after the country's worst economic performance in decades. Lungu's been pushing investment in infrastructure under his leadership as a plus, but with the national debt at $13 billion and more than half the population living in poverty, the opposition says that his borrowing is unsustainable. Our correspondents tell us more.
This gleaming new terminal for Lusaka's airport was inaugurated just 3 days before the presidential election. A state-of-the-art complex capable of accommodating 4 million travelers and costing almost $400 million. President Lungu is very proud of it.
This is why we deserve to remain in office, because we've done much more than what some people of Zambia expected us to do.
This airport was built with a loan from China. Zambia is now the #1 destination for Chinese investments in Africa.
Chinese companies in Zambia have created so far more than 50,000 local jobs.
The opposition criticizes infrastructure projects that have cost the country more than $13 billion. A World Bank report also shows that roads in Zambia cost twice as much as elsewhere. Lusaka is today unable to meet its debt. For this economist, it is not enough to build infrastructure to develop a country.
So where have we spent our infrastructure development monies is in improving the livelihoods of the urban dwellers, people like me. But what about where production actually happens? Agriculture, where it happens, mining, where it happens, so that you actually get to produce and supply even for exports.
The other challenge is social. Over 60% of the population lives on less than $2 a day. James and his NGO takes care of the poorest. These pensioners only earn a subsidy of 10 euros per month. They explain that they don't even receive it on a regular basis.
So after elections, they are promising to give something to the people.
Some of them, like she was saying, she has got 6 grandchildren. It's not enough to take them the whole month. That is why there's need to revise it upwards, and that revision should continue based on the economic situation.
Huge debt, 25% inflation, and plummeting copper production, the next Zambian president will inherit a very difficult economic situation.
25 Algerian soldiers have been killed battling wildfires raging through the country this week. The troops were reportedly helping save over 100 people trapped by the blazes in the Kabylie region. At least 7 locals also died on Tuesday. Dozens of fires have sprung up in forests across the country. The civil protection agencies counted at least 41 across 18 regions. And Ghana's in for a refund of around 1.6 million euros from a firm in the UAE that failed to supply enough COVID vaccines by the agreed date. 3.4 million doses of Russia's Sputnik V vaccine was supposed to be delivered by the end of June, but by the end of last month, only around 20,000 had been supplied. The question of from whom vaccines are being sourced is particularly sensitive in Ghana at the moment, as a parliamentary committee has flagged possible breaches in the procurement process. Now, establishing ownership of land in Cameroon, even after families have lived there for generations, can be difficult. 80% of court cases in the country are about land disputes. Often, it's authorities forcing people out because they can't produce the right paperwork. Our correspondents report.
About 500 families used to live in this part of Douala. Now their homes lie in ruins. A month ago, authorities razed around 100 houses, leaving their former residents destitute. Officials justified the destruction by saying the land belonged to Douala Airport. Many families had lived there for more than 20 years but lacked any official land titles or deeds. Bernard was amongst those made homeless overnight.
We went to meet the government, but they turned us away, and the next day they came to throw us out brutally. I've been here for over 23 years.
About 80% of legal disputes in Cameroon are about land. Séverin Bongo spent 13 years in court after his uncles threw him and his family out of their homes and seized their house after his grandfather died.
There were 5 plots in all. The family council minutes gave this house to my mother and allotted the other land to my uncles, who had already sold the land. My mother therefore went to court for the approval. But in reality, it was not easy. The steps were complicated.
Trafficking in false land titles, judicial corruption and opaque inheritance laws all contribute to the high number of land disputes.
You know, land issues are very delicate issues. Regularly, people kill themselves. If things continue this way, it could all blow up or implode.
About 85% of Cameroon's land is held informally, and owners are increasingly insecure. Land laws are being updated, but progress has been slow and uncoordinated.
Well, that's it for now for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Till then, take care.